Alrighty, so today we're going to be talking about three key content types to nurture your investor relationships. We're going to learn what types of content to have in hand, ready to go, to send as a follow-up, the pros and cons of each content piece, because I mean, well, there are pros and cons to each of them, and finding which one you enjoy and then also which one converts the best. There's pros and cons to it. Which form of content converts the most? Examples of articles and podcasts that we've used that you can actually look at passiveinvesting.com and find either on our YouTube channel or on our website. And then also the ideal content funnel, because when it comes to creating a lot of this content, whether it's blogs or podcasts, there's oftentimes there's often times where you're just speaking into the void and just trying to pick what you think will actually convert and what your audience is actually listening to. But there's a little bit more of a strategic format just to be able to harness and make sure you're capturing the attention of your audience. So this is a lot more on the marketing side of this. Leading up to this, if you listen back to last week's webinar, it was your first call. So this one is typically about the follow-up and how that goes about there. So, and what type of content you're going to be creating as well to help nurture these conversations. A little bit about myself. My name is Taylor Koo. One of the senior investor relations associates here at passiveinvesting.com. Been here for a little over 2.5 years. Now, main objectives for each content piece. We want to make sure that it actually educates the investor and adds value in some way, shape, or form. And then we want to make sure that we're also establishing a credibility and being seen as the go-to industry expert. Now, when it comes to credibility, though, there's three buckets of credibility that I learned from Nicholas Cole, who's a writer, and this is his framework. But there's implied credibility, perceived credibility, and then also earned credibility. And with each content piece, you're going to sort of find a mix of all three. But they also have its pros and cons as well. So implied credibility is making, like, let's say you post something on LinkedIn and it is just very thoughtful, very it's a nice perspective, very thought-provoking. It is just a really good post that a lot of people are just attracted to. It's very thought out. Now, whenever you're seeing that post on LinkedIn, since it's such a good post, the credibility is already implied. You put in a lot of effort. It's your opinion. It's in your opinion, it's right. It's adding value. It's knowledgeable. No, when people see the post, it's not like they're going to look at whoever's writing it and then determine if this person is credible. That's where the implied credibility comes in, where it's like, okay, this is good enough. This person already knows what he's talking about. Perceived credibility, I feel like, is where people tend to gravitate the most, especially when it comes to social proof and trying to build credibility, is they try and get it and attach their name to other industry experts or other industry experts or other organizations that are seen as credible. So like if somebody was featured on Forbes, or if somebody was featured on Business Insider, or someone was featured on Bigger Pockets, because they have that featured button means that they are somewhat credible. But the challenge with perceived credibility is that it does raise your expectations. And so if any concept that comes out that doesn't meet the expectations of Forbes or Bigger Pockets or whatever that implied credibility is, or that preserved credibility is, it could also hurt you in the end too, because now it's not meeting the investor's expectations. And then earned credibility, it's this idea of building in public. I remember when I was first starting out and hosting my own podcast, I would position myself with other industry experts, but then I would constantly be posting. And after a while, people are going to start to see like, oh God, man, this guy is still posting about multifamily real estate. And because I've been in the game for so long and continuing to stay consistent, credibility is earned there. So you want to make sure that your content pieces establish credibility in some way, shape, or form, and then also ultimately build trust and rapport, because these are talking points to be able to further the conversation and eventually lead to a decision to whether they want to invest with you or not want to invest with you. one thing to keep in mind, especially when we dive into these different content pieces, that everybody learns differently. Everybody absorbs contents differently. Just because you're going to be sending a blog to someone doesn't mean that they're going to read it. Just because they're going to be sending a podcast to somebody doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to listen to it or even watch it either. But there's pros and cons to each of them. With a blog, you're able to break down terms and send it to them, and they can learn it on their own time. I like to use blogs and written articles to, and typically it's for like newer investors that I've been using this, but it's to be more time conscious. And so instead of like spending a ton of time on the phone explaining certain concepts to the investor, giving them something so they can do their own homework, and then having to talk about what they've learned from that afterwards, it's an effective conversation. But you want to be able to craft your blog articles from being able to be to a beginner to advanced. But I will say majority of the time, the articles that we've been using and been and I guess have harnessed the most attention have been more so on the beginner side of it. We have had more advanced articles as well, where we're talking about interest rate caps or navigating risks in this real estate environments that is more for the sophisticated investor. But usually talking through those, since they're already familiar with it, I mean, being able, it's just more of a talking point. But needless to say, articles we've seen that have converted a little bit more have been also catered more towards beginners and people that are just newer to the space. Popular ones that we've seen and that I've actually used as follow-up conversations: 8 red flags, understanding the IRR, and then tax strategies and the preferred return. If you actually go to passiveinvesting.com and take a look at our website, you can find each of these articles that are there. And it's a nice holding place too, because if they're going to be going on your website, they're going to look through the articles. They're going to find other articles that might appeal to them. 8 red flags, I would say, is the most frequently used article in comparison to the other ones that I've sent. And that is also for beginners. But I think the 8 red flags is useful and beneficial because it provides a lot of context and also relatability to the investor. So when somebody is just learning about this space, well, okay, let me backtrack. 8 red flags. It started, this list of 8 red flags started from our managing partner, Dan Handford. He currently is a passive investor in 90 different deals with 17 different operators. These are the 8 red flags he looks for that will ultimately determine his decision on if he wants to move further and learn more about the deal. But because there's context in how he's already been invested, and then now it seems like he has the investor's best interest in helping them analyze deals, even when they're talking with other operators, we're going to be seen as the industry expert because we added value to them in some way, shape, or form. So 8 red flags, I highly recommend taking a look at that. And also creating your own, finding your own blog and written article that relates to you in some way, shape, or form, and your investment criteria. Definitely don't want to take anybody else's blogs or articles, because the whole point of this is to make it feel personalized, and actually coming from you. Pros with writing blogs: it's easy to reference. You can just send it out. And there's also a lot less editing as well. With technology where it is now, ChatGPT does help out a lot. I mean, you would don't copy ChatGPT articles, like write just in, you don't copy it completely. Make it your own. Please personalize it, because even Chat GPT, like, people can start to tell. And I think especially now, people are looking for content that seems more human and authentic, and that goes not just for blogs, but even across the whole spectrum of just content in general. But Chat GPT definitely leverage when it comes to editing it and just getting your ideas out and formulating just what you want to say huge help. The cons, though, especially when it comes to blogs, is that it requires focus and then dedicated time. So whenever we send a blog to somebody, somebody would have to actually take time out of their day to open it, look at it, and then uh, actually read the content. So if you're working with busy professionals and they have families, they might not have the time to sit down or take a look at it, read it, and fully digest what's actually going on in the article. But just something to keep in mind as a thought. It still is helpful and beneficial. You want to make sure that it's being read, but it does take focus and time from the investor to be able to look through it. Next up, oops. You have your webinar and podcast. So with webinars and podcasts, actually like this, even when we post it on our YouTube channel, we've had people that have just gone back to the webinar just to listen to the replay. Sometimes they put it in their they put it on their car or I could speak English this morning. They could put it on their drive. As they're driving to work, they can listen to you. And the beauty about having this webinar or podcast is that people can build a relationship with you without you being there. I experienced this both from me hosting my own podcast, but then also listening to other podcasts as well. And it's sort of this odd phenomenon where you are already feeling comfortable with somebody, that you can hear their voice and hear their thoughts, that an article just doesn't have. It doesn't have the power and impact it does with as listening to somebody and seeing somebody. Like for example, whenever I would host, say, my podcast, actually even here at Best Ever Conference, I've had some people that have come up and say, hey, I've listened to you and your webinars beforehand, and I've listened to your podcast too, and I just want to say it was very nice to meet you. Not saying that I'm super popular or anything like that, but I've never met them in my entire life. I don't know who they are, what they're doing, but there's that power where now they feel comfortable in talking to me, and now we can continue the conversation from there. I had this experience meeting my favorite podcasters in the real estate space, and I was almost fangirling, but I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like I've built a relationship with you. I know what you're thinking, and that person has no idea who I am, but I already feel comfortable and trust their thoughts because they've been putting out this content time and time and time and again. And so people are able to build a relationship with you without you actually being there, which is really cool, but then also very odd as well, especially if you feel like you know them, and you know it the odd part is okay. The odd part is uh they yeah they just might not know you, but you might know them. I don't know. Anyways, thoughts are getting jumbled here. Popular ones that we've been seeing for webinars and podcasts: town halls and state of the markets, just having our partners talking about what is going on, patterns that we've been seeing in the markets, and just our take on it. Tax strategies is also another one. And tax strategies is interesting. I was talking to our director of investor education, Whitney Elkins Hutton, and she mentioned that with tax strategies, it seems like people just want to try and find as much information to be able to try and do their taxes on their own. But definitely consulted with a professional. But it just seems to be a very popular, a very, very, very popular um, topic that we've been seeing and collecting data on. Pros, easy. It's an easy way to learn. People can just put it on in the background and just listen to it. Cons, post-production is required. And then also there's additional maintenance and startup costs that comes along with it as well. I mean, you could be posting it on here, but I guess posting it on YouTube. If you wanted to post it on some podcast platform, there's probably some form of hosting fee that you would have to curate or to have to keep up with just to make sure it's on those platforms. So there is some additional cost that comes with hosting a webinar or a podcast, even with buying Zoom too and having it go past that 30-minute mark as well. So just something to keep in mind. And then the last one, the physical newsletter. These physical newsletters that we have, these are exclusive letters that aren't available online. exclusive newsletters that isn't available online, aren't available online. These newsletters, they typically have articles that are featuring other investors that, and we actually have a copywriter that interviews these investors, and they have their own featured article where it's like about them. And that we do that because it also helps other investors relate to some of the people that are within our community. And then also people love receiving physical items as well. I mean, it's something that can be shared. It's something that can be placed on a coffee table. It's something that we can add a personal touch to it. Because, I mean, especially in this digital day and age, people don't have, I mean, people have been absorbing a lot of content, both, I mean, online, but it's refreshing to have something that comes in and that feels authentic and genuine, and it feels like very professional. So if it is done well, seen as very professional, actually, and if you join passiveinvesting.com's just network, we send it out to anybody that's within our network. So if you're really interested in taking a look at what we put in our newsletters, highly recommend that you just reach out and then just and subscribe to our newsletter, because we do spend a lot of time. It's typically articles written by our directors, typically articles written by our managing partners. With that being said, though, it wasn't as pretty back then. I think the best way to start is just to start and put out whatever you can. Just remember that version 1 is better than version none. It doesn't need to be this really expensive looking uh, piece of information. uh, it can just be enough to it can just be enough where people can have it in hand, look through it, and then even share with their friends. But it is a con, though. It can be expensive. It can take a lot of time just putting together all these different articles. And, it, especially if you're going to be doing it on a monthly basis too, it takes a lot of time and focus to be able to curate all this information into one. Now, the challenge when it comes to creating these, oh, okay. Another bonus though. This is going to be the key, and this is actually going to lead into the actual content funnel that I think would be ideal. And I've seen several different other operators that have been using this to harness and build more attention. But LinkedIn, these are micro posts that will capture somebody's attention. Now you're building in public, you're earning credibility, and you're also capturing data for your future content. So like if you're starting to post, and let's say post on a consistent basis, on a daily basis, about several different topics, whether it's in multifamily, whether it's building relationships with investors and what you're looking out for, you're sharing your thoughts, opinions, experiences, you can see which posts do well and where your audience is actually looking to, like what the audience is actually looking to learn from you. You can, if you're creating thoughtful content to help build an audience and then eventually deplatform them, which means taking them off LinkedIn and going to your page. I will say that when it comes to posting on LinkedIn, though, it is a very vulnerable experience. I mean, it's a very professional network, and especially if you have a part-time job as well, it does make things challenging, because I remember when I was having a part-time job, just having that conversation with my employer and sharing some of the different passions that I was involved in. It's Some employers might like it, some might not, but it's just this idea that you're building in public. I will say though, with LinkedIn, there is still some structure and copywriting skills that I recommend to learn. Just because you're posting, I don't know, about something that you've learned, there's actually a strategic formula or structure to be able to try and capture as much attention as possible. And you want to make sure that it's structured in a way, just trying to give you your best odds and best luck of just reaching that audience that you're trying to reach. So like, as you notice, and you're going to start to see this on LinkedIn now, or maybe you're already seeing this on LinkedIn, but people typically just have that hook. And then what LinkedIn rewards is if people click see more. So if they have those first two lines that are just an amazing hook, and then somebody clicks see more, that tells LinkedIn that they're looking to learn more. and the post then is able to be in front of a lot of different individuals. And that's how you can start to define your data and really just try and see what people are looking for and asking for. So at the end of the day, here is the funnel, right? So if you have the challenge when it comes to like creating your newsletter, creating your podcast, creating your blog is that sometimes you don't necessarily know what converts. So here's a little bit of a story with even our own master classes and our webinars. We thought that people would really be interested in self-directed IRAs. And we thought that, and so we started to have a lot of information, or excuse me, we started to push out a lot of content that self-directed IRAs, about self-directed IRAs, but it actually was our lowest performing content. There wasn't that many views. There wasn't that many people attending the actual webinars. And we, if we were posting about this, let's say on LinkedIn earlier, that could have saved us a little bit more time to be able to really focus our attention on contents that people are actually looking to listen to us about. But so that could be your sort of like flywheel, your ecosystem of just being able to check your data and see what people are actually following you for. Now, when it comes to actually the content system and curating this content and creating this content that you want to be able to share, they're using LinkedIn to build excitement that you're going to be posting a newsletter, posting a podcast, posting a blog. LinkedIn is powerful in building that attention. And then you're also educating your investors that are on LinkedIn as well. And then you're starting to have these different talking points that you can share with your newsletter, share with your podcast, share with your blog, and then eventually it's going to go down and funnel into your business. So that is, in short, just the ideal, I think the ideal content funnel. There is so many different avenues that this can unpack, and I was trying to go through as much as I could within this 30 to 45 minutes. I wanted to make sure that we had an additional time for questions, but just some resources that I've been seeing. Justin Walsh, the solopreneur on LinkedIn, he is a magician, especially when it comes to just learning about LinkedIn. Then Nicholas Cole, I'm reading this book called The Art and Business of Online Writing. It also talks about creating the funnel as well and what converts and what doesn't, and how he's been able to build and harness attention to actually give thoughtful content that people feel comfortable learning from. And then also, I'm going to give you two different LinkedIn profiles that I think are doing an amazing job, then that are also operators as well. Anthony Vicino on LinkedIn, and then seems Logan. I think it's Logan Freeman as well. It's so interesting because you can see their model, you can see how they're posting it, you can see just their structure of their posts, but they're driving a lot of people to their traffic, or you're driving you're driving a lot of their people to their platform, and then they're able to have those additional conversations, and then now you can share any newsletter or podcast or blog that you have, and you're creating this whole content library to then further the conversation. Thank you, everyone. Hope you have a great rest of your week. And then if you have any other questions, add me on LinkedIn. Let's get connected. Looking forward to staying connected. Go crush it. Build content. Build relationships. See y'all next time.